Hi guys, welcome back to The Contented Plant. Today we are talking all about the umbrella tree plant or the Schlafera. I have the variegated variety. You can see it's got these really pretty splashes of cream on the leaves and I absolutely love this plant. These plants originated from China. I think they also grow native in Australia. If they're going to grow outside, they need a really warm climate. These are not hardy to cold temperatures at all, so you might be able to get away with sticking your umbrella tree plant outside during the summertime, but it would need to come in before there's a hard frost. I like to pot this in just a general potting mix with a little bit of perlite. I stuck a little bit of orchid bark in there too, just to add some extra lightness and drainage for it. This plant does like to stay a little bit wet more than dry, so I make sure to keep the soil evenly moist. It does appreciate it, and it's a little more resistant to root rot than a lot of the other house plants you'll find. This plant does grow very quickly, so depending on the pot size you have it in, it'll grow quicker or slower. It can get root bound because it does grow so quickly, so you will need to repot it or always check for roots coming out the drainage hole, but I would repot it every 1 to 2 years. If you notice that it's drying out super fast and you just cannot keep the soil moist, then you probably do need to repot it because it's probably getting root bound. I always like to pot this one in a pot that's at least 2 inches up from the previous pot size. You can get away with that a little more than other plants because it can handle having that soil being a little more wet than normal, but you don't want to run up and put it in a 12-inch pot when it's this big. Make sure you're only going up 2 to 3 inches in pot size. This plant does prefer a lot of bright indirect light. It will grow best that way, and it will grow structurally a little more in a bush-like fashion if you have it in a spot that has optimal lighting. If you put it in an area where it's got a lot of lower light, it will still grow, it will still survive. However, it will grow slower. It also will probably get leggy. These shoots will just kind of go this way and that way, and you're going to get these long stalks that just don't look very good. So if you want it to have a nice bushy structure, keep it in a spot that has optimal lighting. Because I have the variegated variety here, this plant will require a little more light than just the basic green umbrella plant. The basic green umbrella plants have a lot more areas to photosynthesize because plants photosynthesize the best off of their green parts of their leaves. So when they're putting out these lighter parts, they don't photosynthesize as well, and if you have it in an area where it's not getting enough light, it's going to produce less and less variegation in order to protect itself. One of my favorite things about this plant is it is on the top air purifying list for plants. Those leaves put out a lot of oxygen, and they also remove impurities from the air that are bad for us, so that's really nice. It's a helpful plant to improve your air quality in your home. I'm very excited about this plant. I'm going to put it in my dining room when it gets bigger because I have a lot of windows and a lot of really bright light. And I just want this to grow into this really beautiful bushy tree structure somewhere in my dining room. So I'm really excited for that. This plant is very easy to propagate. You can propagate from a stem cutting. Basically, you're just going to take a stem cutting. I would do a top cutting here. You definitely want to make sure whatever stem cutting that you're doing, it's from the structure that's still kind of a pliable stem here. You don't want to do it from the woody structure that the trunk will turn into. You take it from the pliable trunk area here and you'll just chop it off, chop the bottom 2 leaves down, and you can either propagate it in water or moist soil. Honestly, because it propagates so easily, I would just skip the water and go ahead and stick those bottom ends, maybe dip it in a rooting powder, stick it back into moist soil. As long as you make sure that the soil stays evenly moist while it's growing roots, it should do fine and it'll propagate you a new plant in no time. This plant is mildly toxic. If you were to ingest it, it can make you a little bit sick, sometimes for up to 2 weeks. So definitely avoid eating this plant or touching it and then putting your fingers in your mouth. You can wear gloves if you have really sensitive skin. I know some people have really itchy skin after they handle this plant a lot or they're touching the leaves. I would definitely wear gloves when you're propagating it because you are cutting it and some of that sap can get out and irritate your skin. Also, if you have kids that like to bother your plants, like small children or dogs and cats, make sure you keep it in an area where they can't reach it. And if you have a child that likes to get into your plants with you, make sure they know that it's not a good idea to eat this plant. This plant will do great in indoor temperatures that are just regular temperatures. If it drops below 60, it can get cold, and if it does get cold, you may see it start to drop leaves. Also, if it's in an environment that's very dry and doesn't have a lot of humidity, it can also start to drop leaves. So pay attention to that. You might notice that the little tips of the leaves can get a bit brown. That's usually a sign that it needs a little more humidity. I keep mine right now next to the kitchen sink, so it gets lots of good humidity from my water running in my kitchen sink, the dishes, the dishwasher, everything ups the humidity. However, when I move it out to my dining room, I'm gonna have to keep a close eye on it. If I see signs that it needs a little more humidity, my favorite thing to do is put a pebble tray next to it with a little bit of water, or add a humidifier sitting next to it just to give it a little extra humidity. You can fertilize this plant 1 to 2 times a week during the growing season. If you are going to fertilize it that much, I would recommend only doing a fertilizer that is a very, very light dose, because you can burn the root structure if you over fertilize. I don't worry about it too much with my plants because I water them using my fish tank water, so they get fertilized by the nitrates from the fish tank water. And then once a month or so, I will go ahead and dose them with a commercial fertilizer that has a little heavier dose of those nitrates. This can get bugs, so like all plants, you need to watch out for that. It can get spider mites, mealybugs, aphids, so make sure once in a while you're checking the undersides of the leaves for any damage that may occur. Also make sure you give it a proper dusting or spritz every once in a while. If you do see a bug on there or a pest, go ahead and spritz it with either some insecticidal soap or some neem oil, and that should take care of it pretty quickly. Well, that's all I have on the umbrella tree plant. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have one of these, let me know down below. I would love to know how it's growing for you. Otherwise, please like and subscribe. You can also follow me on TikTok or Instagram at The Contented Plant. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.